Hi, and welcome to our latest episode of the Check-In podcast, where we're talking about leading wellness and what that looks like at work, at home, and at school. We're talking with community leaders and builders, and today's guest is Ms. Georganne Burke. Georganne, thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Georganne, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
So actually, I'm an American born and bred who moved to Canada and lived there for quite a long time. And recently moved back to the United States, actually living in Florida right now. I'm the Senior Vice President of Pathway Group, which is a government relations firm based in Canada. I work with NGOs, associations, small businesses, providing them assistance when they need to access government, which can be daunting, needless to say. I help them with the bureaucrats, I help them with elected officials. The reason I can do that is I spent many years in politics, both in the United States and Canada. I have a great network of people in the political world and in the bureaucratic world in government. So I can be helpful to these companies when they have to navigate the shoals. And let me tell you, it can be quite overwhelming when you don't really know what to do. And I'm not talking even about just little companies, bigger companies also, if they don't know how to deal with it, we're there to provide them assistance. So I've been with this company for 10 years and almost 11, and very happy with them. It's a great company to work for.
Okay. Georganne, first question right out is what does total well-being mean to you at work?
So I've had jobs when I have not wanted to get up in the morning and go to work. And I can't say that's the case about this job. So well-being to me means if I can wake up with a smile on my face and feel like I want to go and take responsibility for my work, and I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy the people that I work with, that's well-being to me. I don't need a lot of fancy accoutrements. I don't need a fancy office. I don't need, fancy anything. I just need to work with nice people that that have the ability to respect my views, and I respect theirs. And we can all work together, share our differences and agree to disagree now and then. But ultimately, it's not a place when you wake up in the morning, you dread going there. And people will know what I'm talking about because everybody's had a job like that at one time or another. I'm very fortunate that is not the case where I am now. I just love doing what I do and working with the people I work with.
Yeah, and can you share an example of something big or small that the organization does, maybe your current one or something in the past that has truly supported like mental health and well-being in the workplace?
So it's actually very interesting. One of the areas of expertise that our company has is dealing with families in crisis. We have dealt with victim services, with shelter services, with children's services, assisted organizations and associations in the community that are having difficulty working with government. So when you get success for an organization or a group like that, it is so meaningful because you know that it's not just the organization you helped, but it's all the people that depend on them, people who are in crisis, people who are in need, whether it's women, children, and we did work, for example, I work personally with a men's organization with men in crisis. It was an amazing experience. And I find that those are the ones that are most meaningful. Those are ones that you can look back at and you can say that you actually did something that went beyond the organization. You know that your impact was positive for so many people that they help.
Yeah. And I know, especially for men in crisis, what it takes for us to actually raise that hand or make that phone call.
Oh, yes.
Myself included, that's one of the reasons I founded Capillary for Men, was just that. It was just like to create a space where a man can call and say, hey, like, I need some help.
So this men's organization, they actually focused on men who were abused. Mm-hmm. And as you know, from your experience, men don't often raise their hand and say, I'm being abused by my partner.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very hard thing to do. And of course, the numbers out there don't reflect that men are abused in much greater numbers than people would ever imagine. So one of the things of working with this organization was making the government aware of that, and particularly dealing with problems of men accessing the healthcare system. There's a lot of discrimination in the healthcare system against men. I know that the story out there is that there's discrimination against women. There may be that too, but it's very shocking what I learned as I was working with them about discrimination against men in the healthcare system in Canada. So it was a very, I mean, I would say that was one of the more meaningful organizations I worked with over the years. I learned something that, well, it was counterintuitive to me too, frankly. Did I think about men being abused? No, I did not. But when I was confronted with the numbers and the facts behind it, I said, wow, my eyes need to be opened. And it wasn't like it was something that was out there that I missed. The problem is that men don't talk about it. And this organization took it head on, which I think was a credit to them.
Yeah. And so, what's one challenge you've been faced with as a leader when it comes to supporting your team's mental health?
So I'm one of these people. So I should describe our organization. First of all, it's a fairly small organization by government relations standards. So it tends to be a more flat bureaucracy. We have, there's partners and people like me, senior execs, but there's not a lot of us. There's a few. And then everybody else is kind of equal beneath us, right? But as a result of that, people tend to gravitate when they have an issue toward a person they think they can talk to, someone who will listen to them and someone who will support them and maybe even give them good advice, or maybe say, I'm not the right person to ask for this advice. We need to find you somebody that can help you. I've had this happen. I cannot tell you how many times over the years. I think probably part of it comes across because I'm a Jewish mother, you know what I mean? So people kind of say, oh, well, we can talk to her. One of my colleagues years ago was having issues with feeling a lot of pressure from other people in the company to do work that well, it wasn't really her responsibility. She had a huge responsibility to begin with, but then they were piling all these other things on her which had nothing to do with her job, and she didn't know how to handle it. So she kind of called me up one day and she said, do you have a few minutes to talk to me about something? Yeah. And she just unloaded and we talked it out. We talked many times after that, but I gave her some advice that, there is nothing wrong with saying no. It's how you say it, and that you make them understand why you're saying it. It's not just being arbitrary or not wanting to be helpful, but sometimes you're just overloaded and you can't do it. And other times you're taking advantage of the situation of somebody not knowing to say no. I can identify with that. I was the worst at that. I used to take everything on. You asked me to do it, I would do it. I finally learned that sometimes it's just best to say no, because if you've got too much going on, your chances are something's going to slip through the cracks and you're not going to do justice to the things that you have to do. So that was one example. Another kind of more recent example was one of my colleagues and a very good friend lost his spouse. And it was a very shocking, sudden situation. She became ill and over a very short time passed away. And I was one of the people he could talk to. We're all friends. It's the thing is because it's a small enough organization, we've all come to know each other well and consider each other friends. But he didn't reach out to everybody. He reached out to me because I knew him, I knew his wife, knew his kids, I knew his in-laws, and he felt like I was someone who he could speak to. And again, it was just to provide comfort and support in a very difficult time. So sometimes it's not work related. Sometimes but as you know, personal circumstances impact your work, sometimes very negatively, even though you don't want them to. If you're having a problem at home with your kids or with your spouse or with your neighbor, it affects your whole mental state oftentimes. And you find that you just can't focus, or it's impacting on your time and you can't get the work done that you need to do. So it is very important for people in wherever they're working to have someone in that structure that they can talk to. Not necessarily a professional. Maybe it's just someone that they can speak to in confidence and be able to work out their issues kind of that way, or at least to say, this is too big for me to talk about with anybody. I need to get some help. And I kind of see myself in that role a lot of times. I think, as I said, maybe I said kind of jokingly, but I think it's partly true, that because I had 6 kids, I was raised in a large family with very strange circumstances where we all had to learn to kind of do things for ourselves and also to do things for each other, because we were forced to, work in a way that brothers and sisters don't normally do. It really taught me to be tuned in to people's needs. So
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for answering like that. The thing that was coming to my mind when you were speaking there was you bring your personal life into work. I think that's just natural.
yeah,
Um, but when your performance starts to go down and you don't have those open lines of communication, then it compounds, because now you're getting probably stressed from a manager or supervisor or whatever that looks like, and because they don't know.
right.
They don't know any better. But also, moreover, is if you do approach senior management or a manager, we typically don't train. We train on the numbers and so forth, but really don't train on the mental health and the support side of our people. We
That's
do
right.
it from a work perspective. Hey, I'll help you we'll help you with this product, or we'll help you with this service, or with
You make
this.
quota or whatever.
Yeah,
But
but it's
just listening to, sometimes it's a question of being willing to listen to what some people look at as maybe there's the one side of saying this is really none of my business, and the other side is saying I don't really want to hear it because I don't feel like I'm comfortable with that. But the fact is that both of those things are not useful when you have someone who's going through some kind of crisis, and I don't mean necessarily a horrible thing, but it feels like a crisis to them, and it's impacting on their ability to be productive and to perform at their job. It's a good thing to listen to them, first of all, sometimes just talking about it is enough, so they know that somebody knows, they're not looking at you like you're weird, and now they understand why you seem distracted. There is a problem happening, and maybe they will even have some good advice or a resource that you can access, but you'll never know unless there is someone you can talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, because mental health is so unique to the individual person. I know there's a lot of buzzwords always, but what triggers me doesn't trigger you. How I
That's
react to something, you react to it differently.
100%.
And as leaders in organizations and school, I think we have to learn the chameleon kind of approach. And that's understanding, okay, like, even though I don't understand exactly why it's affecting you, we can still have a conversation, and I can still provide resources or like whatever it is,
Yep.
and it's how do we learn to have those conversations? So we've talked about everybody else, and we talked about you a little bit there, but I'd like to know how you recharge your batteries, how you recharge your mental health.
So I guess partly because of the way I grew up and the way I conducted my life, I'm kind of one of these people that's generally an optimistic person. I've had to learn to be optimistic because my tendency was kind of to see the downside of things. I explained to you my own personal background, and you could see maybe why that would be the case. But I've learned that I should be thankful for the blessings that I have. I have an incredible family of 6 children. I told you, my husband, who I've been married to for a very long time. And I have, grandchildren. I have a wonderful network of friends. And I have learned that, and luckily, by the way, some of my friends are the people I actually work with. So that's fortunate. But the fact is that I know I have friends that I can go and talk to about just about anything. I have friends that I have no secrets from. Okay. And sometimes it's important to have friends outside of your family that you have no secrets from, even though you don't have them from your family either, because they will be more rational about the problems that you're facing than somebody who's right in the middle of it. So I just find that sometimes just turning to my friends, going out with them, having a glass of wine, having dinner, laughing and talking about something other than what's on my mind is a good way to break the cycle of being nervous or upset about something. I actually just went through 3 months of planning to move down here, and I found it extremely stressful because I was really making a major change in my life. moving from one country to another, having to do it kind of on my own because my husband was already here, having to kind of tie up a lot of loose ends that he didn't have to worry about when he moved down because I was still there. It was daunting. And but I did realize, and this was the important thing, was I realized that the stress I was feeling was because of the circumstance I was in. There was nothing wrong with me. This is a normal response to a massive change in your life. And what I did was when I felt it was getting a bit much for me, I would reach out to my friends and they were always there to say, oh, I didn't even have to say to them, I'm feeling stressed. I would say, hey, got some time? Can we go out for lunch? Can we go out for dinner? Can we get together? Can we go to a movie? And they were always there for me. So I find it's very important to have a network, whether it's your family or your friends, or if you're fortunate enough to have colleagues like I do, that's what you need. I had a farewell party when I left Canada that my company threw for me. And because they're such good friends, they were all there. And it was in Ottawa and my company's in Toronto. So it wasn't like they were all in the same town. They had to come to be there. And then I had everyone from high-level political figures and ambassadors there to my buddies that I've known for years, and they're just my friends, right? Like they're nobody, no high big name, but I had people from a whole spectrum. And my son was there with me, my youngest son, and he was watching and listening to the people who were speaking about me. And he turned to me at the end of all of it and he said, Mom, I finally understand you. But what was even better, and I know what he meant because, when you're in a political world, it takes a lot of time away from your family. And sometimes the kids kind of resent that a little bit. But he now understood why, that a lot of what I did was because I wanted to see a better place for my kids to live. And that's what everybody pointed out when they spoke. But what was more interesting to me was he was driving home from Ottawa back to Toronto, and he called his brother who lives in Florida. And he said, Dave, I've never been more proud of Mom than I was last night.
Yeah.
So these are things that parents live for. And if you want to know how to uplift yourself, that's the way to do it, boy. Have your kids feed back to you that all the grief they put you through, and believe me, they put you through plenty. Yeah. It's worth it because in the end, they understand that what you did was for them, that it was all, that you did these things, not for yourself. You weren't tough on them for yourself. You didn't make demands on them for yourself. It was for them. So they would be better people. Right? Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. I know I know we always say it's under the topic of mental health, but what I've come to learn, and I'm an absolute believer in, is the whole being, that mental health is the sum of all the parts. And those parts are your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, right? And each one is a tire on a car. And if one of them's off, then your mental health is off.
That's right. Correct. Yep. I agree with you. These are all pieces, and it's sad. I feel a lot of empathy for people who are missing some of these things, that don't have the family connection, or they don't work in an environment where they have supportive colleagues. It makes life far more difficult than it has to be. Now, some of it, like people have to learn to cope with it. Unfortunately, like I said, I've had jobs that I've hated, where the bosses that have been awful. So did I have a choice of saying, I'm just going to react the way I feel? Because if I would have done that, I probably would have been arrested and put away. But no, that wasn't the solution. The solution was to do my job until I could find a way to extract myself. But I had to learn these things. And it's hard for people, if you don't have the support that you need from somewhere else, whether it's friends or family, when you're in a situation like that, you may in your head know how to react, but your heart's telling you to do something else. And it's a struggle. So I think friends and family are so essential to this. Your faith is huge, and many people have found so much comfort in their faith. I don't actually understand this hatred for religion that's out there, because you don't have to believe what I believe. I don't have to believe what you believe, but to deny someone the right to believe something that's bigger than them, that's beyond them, is just such a small-minded thing to do. And to laugh at them and say, oh, you're just superstitious. It isn't about that. It's about understanding that you're I won't say a cog in the wheel, but you're not the end all and the be all. There are things beyond you that are bigger than you that you have to respect. And that leads to respecting your friends and your family because they're beyond you too.
Yeah, I love, when we talk about the spiritual part of holistic health, it's whatever it means to you, and in the end, it's whatever's, and that's what we say. It's whatever's bigger than you.
That's right.
It could be the universe for some people, and the energy that they get from the forest or the trees, and like, absolutely, if that's what helps you become a better person, and you understand that, we're just grains of sand,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that everything doesn't fall on them and everything doesn't revolve on them. That's a lot of pressure on a person. That you are part of something bigger. You can't hide from society and the world, but on the other hand, you don't have to navigate through it alone. You don't have to be alone, right?
And Georganne, what advice would you give to other leaders who want to kind of create these cultures within their organizations?
I think it's very important, and not everybody is. I would say not everybody's good at this, and sometimes they can be a good leader on the business side and maybe not on the personal side. But they have to recognize whether they are or they aren't, and they need to have people around them that can, if they can't do it themselves, that can be accessible to the people that they work with, that can be available to them, that will listen. Even if it's personal stuff, if it's not work related, if someone feels like they can talk to you about something that's going on in their life, you should feel good about that they have that kind of trust in you rather than trying to push them away. So it's important that companies recognize that they're a big part of everyone's 24 hours. That you work with a company, I would say 8 hours, but a lot of people working a lot more than that, those number of hours with the people that they work with. So you have to understand that you're a big part of their life, and you can't just say, we're going to shut off all the things that happen in your personal life or your work life that aren't related directly to productivity, except as it affects it. So we're not talking about, did you make your quota this month? But rather, are you happy doing what you're doing? Are you doing it in the best possible way? How can we support you without being judgmental? And you need people around you that can do that. And as I said, there are leaders who are not very good at that. But as long as they understand that they're not that good at that themselves, but they can find people to be around them that can take that role over, they'll do fine. I'm lucky that the people that I work with, I would say that the partners, generally speaking, are pretty decent human beings that I could talk to. But I think a lot of people kind of default to talk to me when they have an issue. But that's just because, as I said, of the nature of the relationship. I don't actually have a problem. If I have a question, I will go to the person that I think can answer it. But that comes from many years of developing self-confidence, which is not the easiest thing to do, but you have to learn to do it too.
So, speaking of which, when the day comes that you decide to retire, and whatever that looks like, how would you like to be remembered by the people that worked with you, for you?
So it's interesting because I kind of had that experience at this farewell party of people talking about me. So one of the guests at the dinner, and I don't think this is speaking out of turn because I actually have a video of it, was the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, who I've known for 25 years. I've known him since he was a young kid working as a staffer for Stockwell Day. And he came to the party and he spoke. And so he talked about all the things I had done as a conservative activist over the 25 years he's known me, and how much I contributed to the party, and how many campaigns I worked on, and how many candidates I supported and helped, and how many young people I mentored. And then he finally said, and just by the way, I'm terrified of her. Okay. And everyone laughed. And I said, if only he was terrified of me, I get a lot more things done. But I think the point was that the things that he talked about, and he wasn't the only one that talked like that. Other people said the same thing, the type of things that I did and why I did them. I think that's what stuck with my son was, this was not out of being selfish. I was doing these things. I could have done a million other things. I could have made a whole lot of money just going into the corporate world. When I got my MBA, I could have been a corporate who knows what. But It's actually not my personality. I've always been kind of a person who likes to be involved in the community and doing things for the community. The community writ large and specific parts of the community that relate directly to me. And I think the folks that were there that night, they recognize that. They see that. They know that it was largely unselfish what I did, and that there were sacrifices that I made to do it. And they appreciated that. And I guess I want to be thought of that way, as someone who was maybe not completely selfless. Nobody's ever completely selfless, but certainly did things for the best of reasons, not for selfish reasons.
And Georganne, the final question is, what gives you hope about the future of leadership and workplace well-being?
So I would like to say I have hope, but I think it depends on the place you work. Some of the things that I see and hear about in the corporate world, and in not even just corporate world, but in the world of NGOs and the world of, the education system and all of that, worries me. We have, and I'll give you a very concrete example. I have a granddaughter who's going into her last year of high school in next fall. She's a fearless young lady, but what she's told a lot by the place that she goes to school is that she has to be afraid of certain things in life because she's a girl, or because of whatever the reasons are. And and her nature is not to be fearful. She is not a fearful person by nature, but they're telling her that she should be fearful, rather than saying to her, you need to be fearless. You need to be strong, and there's no reason why you can't. And we're here to make sure that happens for you. We're here to provide you that kind of support. I think that's the same problem that we see in a lot of workplaces. We focus on a lot of negative stuff that has nothing to do with work. And I don't think it helps. I think it creates a lot of extra stress for people. I know a lot of people I know have left the corporate world because they can't deal with that stuff anymore. They're happier working on their own, doing their own thing, or doing gig work like contracting, get in, get out kind of thing. And I understand that. I could be that way myself if I didn't get lucky and end up where I ended up with the company I ended up with. I could see that happening to me because I like it to work in a place where I'm independent, a place that fosters independence. I think it's very important, and that supports it, that isn't micromanaging you every minute. That doesn't mean that some people don't need more management than others, but there's a way to do it that doesn't make them feel like you're on top of them every second. And those are things that do lead, by the way, to stress and a lack of well-being in a workplace. Is when you don't have good managers, that's a problem. So the future for me is that our management has to be tuned into more than the bottom line. They must understand that the bottom line will never be achieved by forcing them and not acknowledging that they're human beings. They have to be treated like human beings first, and then the rest will follow. Find good people, treat them well, be reasonable, be open to them, be available for them, because they are people, and everything will be fine. So that's my hope, is that they recognize this, rather than the direction I see some of these companies going.
Yeah, I've recently come to learn the line of culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes, and it's absolutely true. And that is part of the problem, is that these some of these cultural things, which they're kind of a twisted view of culture. When you actually take what's really culture, which is treating other human beings with respect, supporting them, mentoring. I'm a big fan of mentoring, and I've done a ton of it. As a matter of fact, I would walk through Parliament Hill with one of my interns or another staff person, and every third person would say hello to me. So one of them once said to me, "Do you know everybody here?" And I said, "Actually, yeah, most of them have been my interns, or I've mentored them at one time or another." But that's because I'm open to it. It's very important that people do that. You make, first of all, lifelong friends. And secondly, you can look back with pride when you see, like I see some of the people I mentored who are now members of parliament, chiefs of staff, and doing not just there, but doing a good job. So it makes me kind of proud that I had an input into that, right?
Awesome. Georganne, thank you so much. That's all the questions that we have lined up, but I truly appreciate you taking the time to come and participate in this. I must say, with the Alberta Clipper that we're getting right now in Burlington, Ontario, and you telling me that you're in Florida, I'm a little envious, to be honest, but again, thank you for taking the time, and wishing you, your family, nothing but the best in the future.
Thank you so much. Stay in touch. We'll talk soon.